world where achievements and accolades motivate us to do more and be more, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there is more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old, push your way through, and claim the deeper life that's calling you.
That's where we excel.
We're your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslak.
And this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Sit back and relax as we share the shortcuts we've uncovered to help you make shift happen. Welcome back to the Soulful Leader Podcast and happy 2023. This is our second podcast in 2023. And one of the things that Stephanie and I were just chatting about is, I'm going to call it the threads of life and how they come together. And for me, as I'm starting this new year and I'm looking at shifting and who I want to be in this coming year and for the next 10 years and 20 years after that, what are the threads and how do I track those threads? So what I mean by that is, if you think of a tapestry, we oftentimes, we usually look at a tapestry from the front and it's beautiful and it's lovely. And when we're creating it, we're actually creating it from the back. And so on our side, we see all the loose threads and the ends of things, and we're not necessarily sure what it looks like from other people's perspective or what we would call from the front. And so as I'm creating my life going into this year, what are all those colors and what are they coming together to create? And for me, not being so concerned about what it looks like from the front, because there needs to be a level of trust where I want to go with my life, is creating that level of trust with life and spirit, that it's going to be absolutely stunningly gorgeous from the front, and letting go of that my job is to track the threads on the backside and be like, oh, I'm called by this color and I want to go here and I want to do that, and really being in that practice of being present.
I love that. I can relate to that feeling like all tied up in knots side, like getting all tied up in knots and twisted and going, oh my God, I'm just a mess. I'm just a mess.
Because you're looking at it from the back and you're seeing the knots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm all in a knot. And I think we forget that if we can zoom out or zoom up, we can see it very differently. And I know myself, I'm practicing my year of surrender. And surrender to me doesn't mean I'm giving up or giving in. Surrender to me means allowing. Absolutely getting my ego and being very humble and very open to what is meant to happen, not what I think should happen or what I want to control or try to make happen, but to totally have reliance on something more beautiful and kinder and loving than I am, in a higher power, spirit, soul, to lead me.
I have talked a little bit about active surrender in the partnership of dancing. And you and I have talked before about your experience of that in surfing. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, I'm not the best of surfers, but I do love it. And I love it as a spiritual practice for me. And what I mean by that is that it changes me. Anything I've ever found in my life, and this isn't just athletics, this is like stepping out of my comfort zone, whether it's in relationships or whether it's in learning something new. If I feel like, oh my God, I'm scared to death, but I really, really am excited about this at the same time, I know there's going to be great transformation. And surfing has always been that, because there's that part of me that says, ooh, I can't see the bottom of the ocean, so it scares me and it's unknown and I don't know what's underneath there. And my imagination can go crazy. Oh, it's sharks and jellyfish and seals and crazy goopy goop stuff that's going to grab up and grab me. And if I focus on that, then I can't be present. I can't be. I can't be in my heart. I get tense. I get tight. And if you've ever been out trying to catch a wave, and it doesn't have to be on a surfboard, it could be just literally wading in the water. If you're not paying attention, that rogue wave is going to come up and knock you over,
Mm.
or what we call in surfing, recycle you. Like you're going to get tossed in like the washing machine. And what's also beautiful about it is that so you never turn your back to the sea. You never turn your back to the waves. You're always, looking towards the waves, but you're not quite totally facing them, but you're not facing the shore either. You're kind of halfway in between.
So it kind of almost like you're aware of your present and your past and your future all at once.
I love that. That's exactly it. Oh my God, that's exactly it. And you're here in the moment, aware of it all. And it's not like you're out there, just galley gagging along. You actually have to be dropped in. You have to be totally still and quiet and peaceful inside. So it's an actual spiritual practice. And here's what's cool too, is like, we always say things come in threes. Like we often say, oh my God, one more thing. What's the third thing? This is the second thing. What's the third thing that's going to happen to me? Oh no, oh no. And we tend to default to the negative, but good things happen in threes too. So they're both are true, right? Like both are true. And it's interesting because that's how waves in sets will happen. They'll happen in sets of threes. And you think, all right, when I was there, I was like, oh, I'm going to take that wave. That wave looks good. I'm going to take that wave. But if you're really present, that you'll start to experience something very different, that the wave actually chooses you. It calls you. And so I used to say this to people how I'm going to relate this is that I used to say to people many, many times, it's like, well, how do you know that that's what you're supposed to do? Or how do you know that's the right person? How did you know you were in love? And you just know. There's no logical, rational reason. You just know. And that also takes practice. So it's like a paradox, right? It's like you just know, and you also have to practice it, meaning you have to make enough space from within to be able to receive the knowing, because the knowing's already in there. But to be able to be pulled or connected or visualize that guidance, there needs to be space.
I'm going to relate that back to surrender that you started with, of when you're sitting in that presence, waiting for the wave to choose you, that is a place of surrender. And you made a really nice point of saying that doesn't mean a place of give up. It's an active, I've always said for dancing, it's an active surrender. And I just heard myself say it, an act of surrender and an active surrender, both. And so when we are surrendered in that type of way of like thinking, not thinking, of knowing what we know, there does need to be, as you said, a practice to get us there, because it's not something that we're taught to do.
So this is really interesting, because what you're saying is like, we're actually, we tend to rely on our skill set from the past because our teaching, right? And so we go out and we take all the things that we've learned in books and all the things we talked about and all the things we've read and seen and done. And we go, yeah, okay, I think I've got it. I got mastery. Bullshit. So here's the thing. My very first time I ever surfed, I had never, ever been on a surfboard. Never, ever have I ever even known how to surf. I haven't even read anything about it. And you could say, oh, well, this is beginner's luck that you're going to tell me about. It's like, no, I'm not going to tell you it's beginner's luck. I went out and I caught an actual set wave, like, that you're able to turn around, paddle in and have that wave underneath you and lift you up and take you in. And I had a moment of enlightenment in that moment, because I think I screamed my head off and I felt like I turned into a billion particles of light.
Hmm.
No idea. No idea how I did it. And I mean, yes, most people say, well, that was beginner's luck. But at that point, I probably had been doing 10 years of practice already. In that, what I mean is practice, inner practice of like talking and listening to spirit and being still and praying and writing and journaling and all these different things. I had done 10 years of preparation internally. And I don't think I would have owned that at that time. I would have discounted it. And the reason I'm saying that is that if you are a leader in this world, whether it's in your household, at work, with a community organization, it's like we are in a place where we have to drop into the unknown. And if I focused while I was in the unknown, which I already said I'm scared to death because I couldn't see half the bottom of the ocean, if I focused on all the icky, scary things that would freak me out, I would not have been able to be present to be able to catch the wave.
Or if you had focused on, I don't know how to do this, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve this, like all the things.
This couldn't happen first time out.
Right.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to teach me, and you were up in your head and not dropped into your heart.
I
And
was
that's,
so grateful that most of my life I had wanted to learn how to surf. I was so incredibly grateful that, oh my gosh, I was at that time, in my early 30s, and I was like, wow, I have waited for this all my life. I was just so grateful and present. And that's the practice. We have to practice. I said this today earlier. I said, you know, we have to practice being positive. It sounds silly because our natural state is actually joy and peace. And so why do we have to practice it? It's because we're so inundated with who we should be and fears and doubts and worries and scare tactics that we learn, fear mongering. And we have not, I don't even want to use have to. It would be very wise if we take time and we strengthen the muscle of focusing on what's good about this, or gratitude. Why do I love this so much? Or focusing on a loving God or a loving presence that loves you so much that it just wants to get, I was teaching yoga this morning, and this lovely woman brought a picture of her grandson in. He's so darn cute. Oh my gosh, he's 2 years old. He's like, I said, oh my God, look at him. He's a little pumpkin. I love him. He's so cute. And I said this because why don't we talk to ourselves that way? I'm pretty sure the divine says, oh, look at Stephanie. She's a little pumpkin. She's so darn cute. But we don't. And it makes you laugh, but it's like, we are so defaulted to, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. This will never happen. This is too hard. I have to work harder. I have to strive. And if we could surrender all that, if we could just let all that go and allow the little cuteness in us that the divine, or that the world sees us, like you said, the front part of that tapestry, that's so
yeah.
extraordinary. Just for a
I
moment.
I had an experience this past weekend where I had probably 12 people reflect back to me what they saw in me. And it was an absolutely amazing experience because I didn't see those same things in me. And I can't help but think like that's me looking at, I have to tie this knot, I have to do this thing on the back of the tapestry of like, I'm creating my life and I have to do all this work. And here's who I think that I am. And 12 people took a moment to tell me what the front of my tapestry looked like. And it was so, I'm going to use the same word again. So amazing. It was life changing for me. It really was. And there's an exercise that I would love to share with you all if you are interested in doing it. I think we might have shared it on one of our prior podcasts, and maybe not, where you ask a few questions of as many people in your life as you can or you're willing to. it's like kind of the what do you see in me? What do you think? What do you see that I'm good at? What do you
What
do
is the
you
most interesting thing about me?
thank you. What are some of the other questions? Do you remember, Stephanie?
What do you perceive as my gifts and strengths?
Oh, I love that one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what we'll do is in the show notes, we'll put the list of, there's usually 5 questions that you can ask. And what I've done in the past with that is sent an email to maybe 20 people in my life and just said, if you could take a few minutes and answer these for me, I would really appreciate it. And the response that you get back is really phenomenal because people do see you differently than you see you.
Mm-hmm.
And as leaders, I think this is an essential exercise, not like, oh, that would be nice to do. I think this is an essential exercise because as leaders, it's really important to check in once in a while of what does the front of our tapestry look like? What are we putting out there? Just as a self-awareness exercise, and we can then decide, do I want to shift that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you know, I've actually done that exercise with companies and have taken them into, like, they've just been in groups of 3 and they've sat down and they've done the questions for each other. And I've had people who, like, here you are in corporate companies, they're not going to cry. Like, people are not going to show emotion. And here they are, people are hugging, they're welling
Mm.
up, and they're like, I had no idea. Like, to be seen, to be heard, to be valued, to be appreciated. We don't see our gifts and strengths. We don't see our value and our worth. And I'm not saying that we always have to get it from outside of ourselves, because I think that's where we tend to glom on and saying, well, I'm not being recognized at work, or I'm not being recognized or loved or valued by my partner.
But we
But
make
yeah,
an assumption of what other people think of us
that's
based
exactly
on
it.
the back of our tapestry.
That's right. And so those exercises are great to do, because you get it can shift the way you see yourself and be with yourself. But
And
then to
you
take it
recognize,
internally, yeah, and then
yeah.
to take it internally and work with it, not out of an ego-centric place, but of, like, when you get in a hard place, like I said, you've got to train yourself to be positive. You've got to train yourself to be loving and kind. I mean, it sounds ridiculous because that is our true nature. I mean, why would you have to train yourself? But it is a practice. And so when you have some of those nuggets from outside, you can then take it in and say, oh yeah, that's right. If I truly, truly loved myself, I truly connected and believed in a higher place that was good and beautiful, what would happen? What wants to happen through me? How would I see myself differently? Well, how would I talk to myself differently? You'd ask different questions.
You certainly would. I'm also going to recommend podcast number 78 from December because we talked to Margot Curry on that podcast. And towards the end of it, we started to talk about unlearning and how important unlearning is in our lives. We spend most of our time thinking that we need to learn something more, keep in, like I need to keep learning. I need to do it differently. I need to, that push, strive, go. And it's time on our planet for us to start unlearning, to peeling those layers back to who we essentially are instead of who we've been conditioned to be.
And that is what makes space to
It
receive the
is.
guidance, people. That's it
Mm-hmm. right.
right there. When we can let go of who we think we are, the identity, and shatter that. Like, I talk a lot about brokenheartedness or grief. It's like when you have a shattering, it's because it's opening you to new possibilities. It's not because you did something wrong or that, you're a poor, sad tomato, although sometimes I can feel very much like a poor, sad tomato. But it's because you're opening up and you're going to make tomato sauce out of it and you're going to, like, share it with others. And it's amazing. It's amazing. Open yourself up.
I have to share. Stephanie had shared this on Facebook in December, and it's really stuck with me. And it's a writing by a gentleman named Paul Weinfield. And he talks about, at the beginning of it, he talks about how we over-identify with the hero's journey. And that's what we're talking about right now, is like that pushing, striving. I have to keep making myself into something better and achieve and have everybody see that I'm good enough. And he says, in the real hero's journey, the dragon slays you. Because obviously, you know, in the normal, what we think of as the hero's journey, the hero slays the dragon, gets the girl, and everything's good, right? So he says, in the real hero's journey, the dragon slays you. Much to your surprise, you couldn't make the marriage work. Much to your surprise, you turned 40 with no kids, no house, and no prospects. Much to your surprise, the world didn't want the gifts you proudly offered it. If you are foolish, this is where you will abort the journey and start another and another, abusing your heart over and over for the brief illusion of winning. But if you are wise, you will let yourself be shattered and return to the village humbled, but with a newfound sense that you don't have to identify with the part of you that needs to win, needs to be recognized, and needs to know. This is where your transcendent life begins.
Mm.
And to me, that's really where we are. And maybe it's because of where we are in our age, or in our the age of enlightenment. We're moving from the age of information into the age of imagination.
Mm.
And there's so much information on the planet right now that there needs to be a way to discern it. There needs to be, not all information is for all beings. So how do we know what's for us? And that is the transcendent life. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, the practice is continuing to surrender and let go of, and, you know, like, what does it take to take a step back and not be so attached?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that's such something. It's so beautiful. Like, we get to do this life. I keep reminding myself that we get to do this. And, you know, when there's pain, when there's suffering, it is so easy, Maren, to make it, oh my God, I catch myself all the time. It's so easy to make it about someone else. And then I get to be the victim and they get to be the victimizer. And then I need someone to rescue me. And it's such an exhausting triangle.
And then you get to, like, blame
Yeah.
that
Oh my
situation or
God.
that person and run to the next one. And that's what this
Yeah.
Paul Weinfield was talking about. It's like, what would it be like to sit and stay with it? And I know Stephanie just recently went through that, and so did I, in different ways in our lives, where we got to sit and stay with pain and with, and I'm not saying like beat yourself up with it. It's just sit in it, and instead of run to the next thing and
Exactly.
blame, it's like, be present to it, like
Right.
sitting and waiting for that wave, right? Being in that
Yeah.
present.
Yeah. You know, you're not meant to go out and chase it. You know, sometimes we think, well, we have this belief, well, that'll never happen for me here. And I'm like, you know, here's how the universe works. When you are in your heart and there is space and you sit with the emotion, whatever it is, anger, frustration, fear, sadness, even joy, if you just let it marinate you, because that's what it does. It marinates you. If you don't, you're just going to be a tough old soul out there somewhere else. You
Wow,
know,
that's so true.
instead of being marinated, I do that with my clients. I go, I'm going to let you marinate right now. I'm not abandoning you. I'm not judging you. I'm just letting you marinate. I'm right here. And I needed to do that with myself too, of like, dang, when it's uncomfortable, you just want to get the hell out of there, you know, whether it's marriage, a job, or whatever it is, pain. I would say, you know, like that pain, like that again, that grandmother that brought the picture of her grandson. And I said, you know, what if where there was pain, where there was suffering, where there was shattering of your ideals, whatever they might be, your ego, What if that was the little tiny child inside that you're like meant to go and say, "Oh, look at you, you cute little pumpkin, you cute little muffin." And the only way it's like you think about it, a child that's scared or sad is going to act out until they gets your attention.
Hmm.
Well, that is what pain, that is what difficulty, that's what challenge does. It makes us present. And if we can just be, be with it without judging it, without fearing it, without adding to it, without making it personal, even though it's personal, just to be with it, cry, scream, yell, it moves. And then ask for help. One of our teachers always says it's like, there's nothing in this world that you cannot, that you attract in your life that you cannot overcome. But here's the paradox: you're not meant to overcome by yourself, which means one has to break open, shatter one's ego, and ask for help, and then also receive it. Most of us don't ask for help. We just go, next, I'm out of here. Done. Go. I'll do it myself. I don't need anybody. Nobody can fold the towels the way I want them folded.
No one
It's
can do that
yeah.
spreadsheet the way that I want it
Oh my
done.
God. So silly things, crazy stuff, right?
Right.
But I've really been practicing that. When I say the surrender for this year is my word, I've been practicing being vulnerable, being, as Brene Brown says, it's actually the highest form of courage is to be vulnerable, because you're sitting in it, you're being with it, and then you're reaching out, and I'm saying, "Hey, Maren, I'm having a rough time. I need a perspective. I need your help. Can you see a higher story? Because right now I'm in the hole and I can't see the higher vision of this. Can you give me a new perspective?" And then I need to be open to listen to it. I had an example of this with my mom here not so long ago. It was great. And because my mom and I haven't always had the easiest of relationships, which I'm sure most people out there listening can say, "Yeah, I can relate to that with my parents or my child." And that's normal. We're meant to have friction, right? Because that's how we grow. But I was saying, I was really, really sad and I was hurting, and my mom said to me, she goes, "So what are you believing that's making you sad?" I'm like,
Hmm.
wow, that was an insight. Wow. And I said, "Well, I believe that I'm just too much, that, my energy, my vision, my imagination, my perspective on life is just so big. Sometimes it scares people. Sometimes it pushes people away." And, she asked another question, and then she said, "So what do you believe about that?" And I said, that no one will ever be able to meet me there,
Hmm.
and that my standards are way too high. And then she replied saying, "Well, actually, yeah, your standards are too high." Which my part of me that wanted to like run and yell and scream and make myself right, and the old pattern of myself, she put her hand up and she said, "Let me finish." She said, "Your standards are high in the pool that you're playing in. You're in the kids' pool, and it's too high for little kids. Go get in the big pool, the adult pool, or the ocean. You know how to swim. When you're in that place, you're with people who can totally play in your ocean with you, and your standards are not too high. Go fish in a different pool." And I love that. I mean, that's so true when we think of, as visionaries, as like you said, this we're moving from an age of information to imagination. Image nation. We need to reimagine ourselves and each other and our world. And that is going to mean going into the unknown.
It's also going to mean surrounding ourselves with people who can hold the space for a bigger vision of us. And that means, yeah, stepping out of the kiddie pool and into the adult pool. And
And maybe letting go of some of the people and places and things and habits that are old habits, old ways of being that aren't allowing you the space and the breath and and the depth and the height that you are able to go.
And so I encourage everybody to take a moment at the beginning of this year and look around at the people who are in your life, and not with judgment, just with an eye for where am I going and who do I want, what level of person do I want there that's going to help me to get there? Who are my mentors going into this year? Because the mentors are the ones that will hold a larger space for you. I know that that's true for me. My mentors all have a huge vision for me. And sometimes I don't even have any idea of a grasp on that. And that's okay. I don't need to. I can allow them to hold that for me and then hold it for other people. That's how life works, is that we are meant to, like you said, Stephanie, earlier, we're not meant to do it alone. We are meant to do it as a collective. So in your world, what does your collective look like? And do you have at least one, and I would encourage you to have more like 5 people who are holding space for a really big vision for you and your life. All right. Well, I think that's a great place for us to leave you for today. Remember that we do have all of the links in the show notes, and in today's podcast, we talked about those 5 questions that you can ask that will shift yourself. And hey, if you're a leader, you could actually do it with your team. It would be a phenomenal exercise to do at the beginning of this year, going into setting up a new and different year for yourselves and for your teams. So those are in our show notes. You can also find us on Facebook and LinkedIn under the Soulful Leaders, and on our website, thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com. We look forward to hearing from you, and we'll talk to you all next week.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader Podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.